Well, we always learn from every season, and you look at the last few games of the season every year, and that to me is a barometer of where you're at and where you need to go.
Hey, you guys just keep covering. You can't scramble all game. We're eventually going to get us.
The Bills indeed pressured Patrick Mahomes in the divisional round. They were able to generate 29 pressures, but only 2 of those were sacks. The Magician extended plays and drives all game by evading Bills rushers, which is why Bills general manager Brandon Beane made a splash in free agency.
Von Miller is going to the Buffalo Bills on a huge deal. The kind of surprise team, a 6-year, $120 million deal with the Bills.
The thing with the Buffalo Bills is they have a great rotation. I mean, they had 8 guys that were going, but no one was consistently getting to the quarterback. So now you spend big.
And Beane did, because in his mind, the Bills needed someone who could finish, someone who could turn those pressures into sacks.
That closer, that finisher. Okay, this guy knows how to get to the quarterback. It's proven. He's done it 115 or whatever times, and we don't have that on our roster, and this was the only way to get it.
But in order to be a closer, pass rushers must excel at different areas throughout their pass rush plan in order to have a shot at closing out a play. Starting with the foundation to Miller's game, which has always been the initial burst and explosion.
I mean, he's just one of a kind. The explosion he has off the ball compared to even some of the other best guys, I don't think anybody's quite in the same step as Von.
Even though he's closing in on 33 years of age, Miller is still in the upper echelon of rushers when it comes to burst off the line of scrimmage. He is routinely up the field further than his teammates once the ball is snapped. This forces quarterbacks to have to step up in the pocket or get rid of the ball.
Just in your mind, think about climbing the pocket if you have to. If, a 40's just getting off the ball, you might have to climb up and buy yourself a little ball.
Opposing coaches and quarterbacks are still extremely aware of his upfield burst and ability to threaten the outside hip of offensive tackles, especially considering how far out wide the Broncos and Rams aligned him, which is something the Bills may need to incorporate. Miller operates best a few shades outside tackles and tight ends because it forces tackles to have to kick out wide to close a horizontal distance while also getting challenged vertically as Miller attacks upfield. Miller is then able to manipulate the apex of his rush line, but more importantly, able to control the junction point between himself and the lineman. This can cause linemen to continuously adjust their angles in order to maintain the half-man relationship of the pass rusher. If they don't, the speed and athleticism by Miller will cause them to lose the outside edge rather easily. Accelerating out of the blocks is always key, but what is not discussed enough is the anticipation of the snap by pass rushers.
His jump is pretty incredible.
He has one of the fastest get-outs I've ever seen.
Look at how Miller anticipates the ball being snapped as the center's helmet pops up. He consistently picks up on snapping rituals and cues from offensive linemen.
I like to get as many clues as I can to get a great jump. Some quarterbacks will be under center, and before they get ready to come out, his heels up first. Right when he get his heels up, I'm going. Some centers, when they down, to hike the ball, they so big that they got their heels coming up and they hiking and getting out of it. The guard or the tackle will be like this, or look like this.
Here's one example I found from 2021. In this game, the Bucs had backup right tackle Josh Wells in the game, and he was consistently firing out of his stance a tad early to give himself a shot against the Rams' wide alignments and speed off the edge. Well, I believe Miller picked up on it and used it to help him anticipate the snap. The ball hasn't been snapped, but yet Wells is moving, and so is future Hall of Famer Von Miller. It's this type of savviness and burst that can get him to a quarterback in just over 2 seconds. It's also an area the young Bills pass rushers Gregory Rousseau, Carlos Basham, AJ Epinesa, and others struggled with along the defensive line. Watch how late off of the ball they are. The ball is nearly halfway to Brady before first movement. A late jump doesn't allow them to beat the lineman to the junction point in order to win the race to the QB spot in the pocket, which means the linemen are able to stay in between the rusher and the quarterback. Miller's get-off and ability to bend the arc and flatten to the quarterback can stress tackles, as our friend Bruce Nolan from Buffalo Rumblings succinctly breaks down.
One of the things that separates Von Miller from the pass rushers that Sean McDermott has typically employed in his defense is the bend. It's important to note that when we say bend in relation to pass rushers, technically anybody can bend. Technically, all of the long-limbed, heavy-handed compression-style rushers that you're used to seeing in a Sean McDermott defense and that historically he's gone after during his time in Buffalo, they can bend too. They just won't be able to maintain speed while attacking the outside hip of an offensive tackle while they do it. This is where ankle flexibility comes into play. This is where knee flexibility comes into play. This is where the strength in the core necessary to be able to get that shoulder underneath the outside arm of an offensive tackle comes into play. These are traits that you don't historically see from Sean McDermott pass rushers. His willingness to depart from that normality is part of the thing that makes the Von Miller acquisition so interesting. The ability to motorcycle turn your way around an offensive tackle, get very low to the ground, maintain your velocity and speed through that, flatten the rush angle to the quarterback, and accelerate the finish is something you don't see a lot from edge rushers in Sean McDermott's defense.
And while we should expect some of his burst and bend to naturally decline over the next 3 years, fans shouldn't worry about a decline in his ability to get to the quarterback because Miller has an array of tools in the toolbox. His ability to anticipate the snap and get off the ball are complemented by the ability to convert speed to power. This is a trait that McDermott will appreciate because most of his pass rushers win in this manner. Rather than winning the outside hip with speed, Miller transitions from an up-the-field rush into a power move, moves that compress the width of the pocket. Miller determines the quickest line to the quarterback and then attacks it with power straight through the tackle. It's extremely effective because tackles are kick sliding with speed to meet Miller out wide as to not get beaten around the edge, so they aren't typically able to anchor down once Miller transitions to power. Generally, they'll get caught light on their feet and with their pad level elevated. And Miller's deadliest delivery of speed to power is when he uses his long arm.
Great get off, leverage, and then you disengage by knocking him back off of his heels and putting him on his butt.
Miller's able to use his 33.5-inch arms to land first touch, to gain leverage on an offensive tackle, and then convert all of his speed into enough force to routinely knock back offensive linemen. Throughout a game, you'll see Miller vary up his pass rush plans. So once his opponent has seen the long arm and begins to adjust,
I'm gonna show this. See if he shoot right here, it's gone. But I dip underneath right here. So I show the ghost, I show the long arm, but I use the shoulder dip underneath. So now this arm is right here. I've been showing it's been up high. And then this time where I need it, I need that fastball, and I'm gonna dip underneath.
Tackles are so concerned with his burst upfield and long arm that they will haphazardly punch out with both hands, which is the most vulnerable a tackle can be. When linemen punch out with two hands, their weight completely shifts and it can put them off balance. And that's when Miller throws the fastball by dipping under the hands, avoiding contact, and bending to the quarterback. He sets it up beautifully over the course of the game and times the dip with precision. Miller's pass rushing traits will be respected, and in many ways his ability to disrupt the timing and rhythm of quarterbacks will set up some of his new Bills teammates, especially on stunts and twists, as Kendall Mirsky explains here.
We all know that Von Miller is going to get his. In his age 32 season spent with two different NFL teams, he had 13 sacks, 82 total pressures, and a 20.4% pass rush win rate. But what doesn't get talked about and what I'm most excited about with him joining the Bills is how he impacts his teammates. In the 9 weeks before Von Miller ever played a snap for the Rams, Greg Gaines and Aaron Donald had a combined 59 total pressures. In the first 9 weeks that they were playing with Von Miller, they combined to have 72 total pressures. This play is a great example of how Von Miller assists his interior defensive linemen. The Rams are set up here in a very wide alignment, and with Hudson helping out the left side of the offensive line, Gaines and Miller are left with a hat on a hat here. And you can see number 68 is locked on to Miller with 73 locked on to Gaines. But with the twisting action, Miller effectively takes out 73, allowing Greg Gaines to disengage and run around the arc with a free shot at Murray. I'm super excited to see how the Bills decide to deploy more stunts on this defensive line, not only in an attempt to free up Von Miller, but also in an attempt to assist the interior defense.
Much attention. Sure, there is truth to that, but how about we show some respect to Miller? On this play against the Buccaneers, Donald and Miller are in wide alignments to the weak side of the formation. On the snap, they run a text stunt. Donald attacks upfield as Miller twists back inside. The wide alignment and speed by Miller has to be respected by the left tackle Smith. So you see how the B gap opens up as the tackle kick slides wide. Left guard Ali Marpet gets his hands on Donald and then passes him to Smith because he senses Miller looping inside. But because Smith had to widen and gain depth to maintain the proper angle versus Miller off the edge, Smith and Marpet are on different levels and the gap between them is too wide. And Donald is able to exploit it to bring down Brady for the sack. Whether they plan these sort of games or not, Miller understands the timing and where the inside edge is going to be because he understands pass protections. And I have a feeling that Miller and some of his interior running mates, like Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Tim Settle, and Jordan Phillips, will generate a lot of pressures off of these stunts in 2022. The Bills rely on their front four to generate pressure, and this is one way to generate disruption without blitzing.
I don't think people realize how hard it is to get a sack. We make it look routine. There is nothing routine about getting a sack. Deacon Jones, who coined the term sack, he'd be proud of watching you play right now.
Getting to the quarterback seems to be routine for Miller, seeing as how he's racked up 115.5 sacks thus far in his career. That's a testament to his physical abilities, but also his football intelligence. But Bills general manager Brandon Beane signed Miller because of the Bills' inability to bring QBs down. Miller has the closing trait that so many of the young Bills pass rushers simply do not have yet. But as we have seen, in order to be at the doorstep of the quarterback, you need to have an array of pass rush moves. And Miller still does, and he tests offensive linemen all game.
All of my moves, I'm going to throw them at the offensive lineman in the game. I'm going to throw everything I got at the offensive lineman with. I'm going to throw the spin 1 or 2 times a game. I'll do the long one 1 or 2 times, book. All of the moves that I got in my repertoire, I'm gonna throw these at the offensive lineman.
Which forces offensive linemen to worry about all of the pitches that Miller can throw. And it seems like Miller's anticipation of the snap, burst, speed to power moves, and ability to finish are on display every week. But even more so in the playoffs. Miller finished last year's Super Bowl run with 22 pressures, including 4 sacks, 2 of which came in the big game. He's been on losing teams, he's won Super Bowls, he has the pass rush chops and leadership traits the Bills wanted to add to their number 1 ranked defense.
World champ! Hey, he told us! Football habits! He told us! And we here! We saw you, bro!
And with all of that said, this may have been Miller's first and only crack at free agency, and he chose Buffalo, and here's why.
I'm excited to be part of this team. You know, they got a special team that's going to win the Super Bowl without me. That's going to have a great team without me, man. And, you know, I'm excited to be here and excited to be a part of it. I'm excited to go chase multiple Super Bowls with these guys, man, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here. Bills Mafia, what's up, baby?